So today's speaker, we're very excited to have Stephen Bassett with us. He'll be presenting on the political implications of UAP, UAT phenomenon and disclosure. Everybody wants to know about disclosure, big topic. So Stephen Bassett has spoken to audiences in 20 countries about the political implications of UAP, ET phenomenon and disclosure, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging in the human race. He is co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, a 501c3 nonprofit providing education, consulting, analysis, and political activism for this post-disclosure world. His advocacy work has been well covered by national and international media, including CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Washington Post, and New York Times. Bassett has appeared in many documentary films, and his lectures and interviews are well represented on YouTube. In 2013, PRG organized and conducted a citizens hearing on disclosure. You may have seen that. That was a big deal. You can find it on YouTube if you haven't heard about it. At the National Press Club in Washington in November of 2014, PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. In December 23, Steve co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in Los Angeles, a new media-centric organization aiming to align those working within the UAP ET research arena with writers, directors, producers working across every facet of the global entertainment industry. Now, just a little teaser, we're going to be seeing a lot more of Hollywood Disclosure Alliance people in the next few months. So Stephen is just the first of the few. So the PRG is presently working to help bring about ever more comprehensive congressional hearings in the U.S. House and Senate for a growing list of UAP witnesses. So Minnesota MUFON, I want you to give a great big warm Minnesota welcome to Mr. Stephen Bassett.
Howdy, folks. I am not in my usual studio. AT&T has not shown up twice now to install my new internet system. So I'm down in the lounge of the National Press Building, which is quite wonderful, by the way. It's quite nice. I didn't have time to set up a camera thing, so I'm going with my basic computer setup. But it's kind of got a spooky look, like maybe I'm in a skiff. I want to go in a skiff. I've never been in one. That'll be the day. So there is also a physical audience as well as the online audience. Is that correct? I can't hear.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good.
Yes, we're physical and online. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So let me get this up. Okay. Boy. I've been at this for 30 years now, which is insane. And I've been at this as a political activist. People refer to me as the UFO lobbyist. I'm not the UFO lobbyist. I was never really that. I was a political activist who registered as a lobbyist on the subject matter, but you know how that goes. And so I'm called that. It turns up here and there. But I'm actually a political activist who is addressing this subject politically. And that's important for what we'll be talking about today. I've spent half of my life in the Washington, D.C. area, going back to when I was a child. I know it pretty well. And I got politicized in the 60s, but I didn't really follow up. But the 60s were something else. For those of you that missed it, let me tell you, it was quite a decade in so many ways, some good, some bad, some incredibly bad. So my work is political activism on this issue, and it is to achieve a very well-defined goal, prize. I know this because I decided what the prize was, so I can't fail at this. And the prize is that the U.S. government will confirm to you that there's a non-human presence here, almost certainly from other stars. Whether they've been here before in ancient times is cool, but the fact that they're here now is extremely cool. That is the truth. There's a conference that may be taking place later in this year over in the Middle East that, if it goes forward, will have the name "We Are Not Alone." That's the truth. That's the core truth that government has held from us. You can rephrase it a lot of different ways. but it keeps coming down to the same thing. We are not alone. Some people struggle with this. I respect that. Some people struggle with what we know about this world. In just, well, not going back, hell, maybe 50, 60 years. It's only been about 60 years, maybe 70, since we came to understand that the number of stars in our galaxy is beyond understanding. It's billions, hundreds of billions. And the number of galaxies, which is more recent in our universe, is more than the number of stars in our galaxy. And the total number of stars is a number so big, you can't comprehend it. And here we are in it, right? I read a line yesterday, and or I heard it, I forget, I think it was I read it, where some astute person was commenting on the issue of insignificance. When you really know enough, when you know enough about our universe and where we are, it is easy to feel really insignificant, which is one reason not to pay attention to that. Just, okay, it's big, I don't need to hear about it, right? Got a planet here. It's got me very much busy, lots to do. But the reality is, yeah. However, the other way to look at it is this. You were alive. You got to be alive. Not at any time, but at a time, which is a relatively short time, when you knew how big it was. You became aware of how huge it was and that you were part of it. You thought about it, which is a lot. It's pretty good. It's the way to think. But it gets better because we're not alone. And there's other entities engaging us who have been around far longer than us, who probably know entities around far longer than them. And if we could ever get to the point where we could have an open engagement with these entities, as opposed to the uninvited midnight meeting or some skiff that the government's put on where some ETs have to sit down and talk to them, but we never know about it. I'm talking about really engaging them and knowing what they know or getting to know what they know. Can you imagine what these ETs know about this unbelievably massive galaxy that they possibly can navigate supraluminal, meaning faster than the speed of light? That's pretty cool. But you don't know that, and you are talking to them. And the reason for that is absolutely simple to know. The United States government will not tell you. It will lie if pressed. It will obfuscate. It will interfere. It will put out disinformation. It will threaten. It will misdirect. And it's done it for 80 years. And one of the consequences of that, a significant component of one of the biggest problems facing our country today, is the American people are more and more people are getting right up to the edge of not believing a damn thing the government says about anything. And that's not good because the government says a lot of things which are true. A lot of organizations do. But once you lose confidence sufficiently, you can't believe anything. And if you can't believe anything, you've got nowhere to go and you don't know what to do. And you're feeling that now. I know every single one of you is feeling it now. Okay, now, second thing. I apologize in advance for this. But as I say, I'm a political activist. They were my heroes. That is what finally motivated me. I've devoted the rest of my life to it. I take it seriously. All right. And so I pay a lot of attention to politics, both domestic and foreign. I'm not an expert, not a college professor, but boy, we live in an age where if you want to pay attention to stuff, you can do it 24 hours a day. You have to choose what you listen to, what you watch, so forth. And if you choose well, you get a decent understanding of what's going on. I feel like I've done okay there, but obviously, there certainly could be flaws in my understanding, and I respect that. I try to appreciate and respect all other people's positions. I am apolitical. I am a registered independent. I have approached this issue for 30 years without ever going partisan that I'm aware of. If I did, it was an accident. It might have been 25 years ago. This is the most nonpartisan issue in the world, as more and more people are coming to understand. So where am I going here? I'm not an entertainer. I'm a political activist. I can get funny. It's helpful, but that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to be an activist and help people understand where things are going and to deal with what's coming and to help it get us where we need to go. But I'm a political activist, and therefore I'm here to tell you something that you need to know. Not what you may necessarily want to hear, but what you need to know, because it's relevant to the issue, and therefore it's in my bailiwick. The next couple of months, 2, 3, are going to be the most unsettling, difficult, problematic, scary in your lifetime politically. Now, if you go back as far as I do to the 60s, right? I got to tell you, the 60s was interesting. It got really intense. There was a lot of upheaval. There were riots, lots of riots, a lot of things burnt down. You had all kinds of political scandal. You had political turmoil. You had a considerable amount of partisanship, pretty much around the war. And it was quite a decade. This is going to surpass that. And so you need to prepare for it, deal with it, handle it as best you can, try to keep your balance, try not to get carried away, and we'll get to the other side, hopefully before spring or even St. Valentine's Day. Okay, so that's the hard news. Now here's some good news. And this is very important. In spite of the most extraordinary political era I have ever experienced, troublesome, chaotic, contentious, nasty, ugly, you name it. The extraterrestrial issue, the disclosure issue, which started to pick up speed in 2017, has never stopped moving forward. In other words, no matter what's going on elsewhere, this issue just keeps moving. Now it slows down, right? Maybe it steps back a little bit, mostly it just keeps moving a little bit. Because the people that have finally engaged it politically, both in the public and in the Congress, are determined to resolve it. Thank God. I've waited a long time for that, approximately 25 years to get to that point. I thought it would take a lot less time. So they're pursuing the issue and they're not going to stop. And one of the reasons they are doing that is because they understand, came to understand, took a lot of work to get them there, that this is the most nonpartisan issue on the planet. Period. Nothing else comes close. You want to politicize it, go for it. Not going to work. But it gets better because those that have engaged the issue, to their shock, in some cases, started getting love mail to go along with the hate mail, right? This is great. Thank you. Keep it up. Go for it, right? From people of the other political persuasion. Some of these individuals went from being almost unknown members of our United States Congress to being worldwide known, almost superstars in some respects. That is one of the reasons why this is now continuing to move forward, no matter what. And that is more confirmation that we will get disclosure. Now, for those of you that are a little singed by my somewhat negative opening here, never forget that I Am Practically a Legend is being absurdly optimistic. So you got to put those two things together, right? He is absurdly optimistic to a fault. So therefore, these things are telling us it could be really bad. It can't be that bad. You'll be okay. That's true. But you got to go through, or put it this way, It's always darkest just before it goes completely black, but the sun always comes up. Let's hope it comes up around February. Okay, so where are we in terms of the disclosure process, both in the full public arena and in the Congress? Let's start with the public arena. The public awareness, and we'll focus on the United States. A lot of this applies outside of our country without question. There's things going on, but let's just, stick with the US. There are a growing number of organizations, projects, institutes, foundations, whatever the hell. I can't even keep up. I'm going to be doing a major blast to my updates list. I haven't done anything in quite a while because I've sort of bunkered in, right? But I'm going to do one soon. If you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, you can subscribe up in the upper left corner of every page, and you'll get them. It's easy to do. And if you can unsubscribe at any time. It's a standard constant contact approach. And soon I'll be sending out a pretty substantial update to try to, as it'll be essentially a giant email with all kinds of links to all kinds of things that you want to check in on at your convenience as a sort of a template you can just go to, right? It's going to take a while to put together, but I'm going to do it pretty soon. And one of the things you'll learn is organizations are forming, substantive organizations. These organizations are filled with PhDs and people of substance and careers in science, in politics even. People that we would have begged to get involved back in the 60s, 70s. Some of these people like this, interestingly enough, got into this field in the early days after Roswell with the creation of NICAP, right? That became a very significant organization, had lots of scientists, political people, even in the open, members of the intelligence community. It got up to a lot of members, but then the government made its moves and started to, how would you say, disassemble the issue in every way that it could. And these people left and didn't come back for decades. People with money would not support. People in politics wouldn't touch it. People in science wouldn't touch it, except for a few noble and very important people. So with most of the world pushed off the side, it was to good old regular citizens to do what we had to do. And it went on for 50 years. Citizen journalists, citizen researchers, citizen filmmakers even, right? Citizen activists, of course, and of course, witnesses, pushing the issue, adding more evidence for 50 years until finally in 2017, it broke. And now things are picking up speed in the civilian area because of the internet, because of all of the extraordinary technology available to anybody, including a 10-year-old. There are 10-year-olds out there that are using DaVinci Resolve to, make home edit films and stuff, God knows. And so that's all happening. And we could go on and on and on, and 300 million cameras of high quality in the hands of every person to film whatever the hell they see. That has exploded. Okay, that's good. The amount of media coverage is exploded. In the last 7 years, I've now logged in 8,000 articles, substantive articles, triage from tens of thousands, meaning I'm not interested in that. It's fluff. It's nothing important, but good media, professional media, 8,000 articles. It's on the website under projects. You can go read them all. And if you read all 8,000, you're going to be pretty sharp. All right. And you'll have a very good understanding of what's happened in the last 7 years in terms of the interaction of the public and the politics and so forth. It's not about deep articles about this event and that case and this that's already been proven 10 times over. It's about the process of disclosure itself and the public awareness and the engagement. It is an unbelievable story. It is the story of the truth embargo, which if I win the lottery, I'm going to make that series. It'll be the equivalent of Ken Burns's Civil War. It is the most extraordinary story, I think, of all, politically in a lot of ways of all time. In other words, it's the story of how every country in the world went 80 years without a single head of state confirming what eventually billions of people figured out, that there's non-humans here. And they managed to not have to commit it for 80 years. And everything involved in that constitutes the truth embargo. And it is unbelievable story. In fact, I think the truth embargo and how the United States government and its allies and the other countries managed to keep this thing under wraps, essentially, is more interesting. And in some ways is profound is the ET presence itself, which I was kind of used to when I was a teenager. I kind of knew they were here. You didn't have to read too many articles to know, oh yeah, there's ETs here. That's cool. And naturally you started reading lots of science fiction. And that's why science fiction movies make a couple of $1 billion sometimes, because people at one level or another, consciously or subconsciously, have known there's ETs here since they were kids. All right. So the truth embargo, that's moving forward. We will get disclosure. It is absolutely inevitable. And the public is ready and the public is participating, but the public is distracted because the world is complicated and the world is dangerous, and it's getting more dangerous. And politics can be nasty and it's getting more nasty. And so it's acting, all of that is acting like a buffer between this growing interest of the public and that fundamental truth, which is going to be the name of a conference later this year, I believe. We are not alone. Now let's talk about the political side. Here is where we are. Quick sum up, right? Over the last 8 years, untold numbers of witnesses have interviewed with members of Congress or their staff on the Hill. The vast majority of those are not even known. They took place, they weren't divulged, they weren't acknowledged, but they took place and they got information to make decisions about what they were going to do. How many? We may know one day, right? Maybe post-disclosure when the historians jump in. And all of those interviews and information that they were gathering helped them to make the decision, okay, well, let's get on that train. Now, how did they get on that train? Legislation. The issue needs legislation. It's always needed legislation, all right? And so they started passing it. The first act was put together in 2020 and signed at the end of that year, and referred to a 2021 bill. And then next year, there was another piece of legislation. The year after, there was another piece of legislation. And then there was the ultimate piece of legislation, which is so comprehensive, the UAP Disclosure Act. Thank you, Senator Schumer, for putting disclosure in the name. I appreciate that very much. And so do my colleagues. Couldn't get it through, but they got half of it. And then they resubmitted the entire thing again. And it didn't go. Then they resubmitted the entire thing again. And it didn't go. That's a lot of legislation and attempted legislation, right? It got a huge amount of publicity, hundreds and hundreds of articles about that act, right? It's there for everybody to read. The original act is there for everybody to read. So anybody in the world can go online and read the original UAP Disclosure Act, which is what we're going to get eventually, and see where it's all going. That's not 1969, 75, 82, 2000. That's a light year beyond all of that. And that's where we are. The legislation is being put together. It's there. It's ready to be signed. We just have a few things going on right now that need to be settled one way or another. In addition to that, they started setting up organizations, which is what you're supposed to do. Project Blue Book was kind of an organization. It was a project. They did a project. So that was something. 62 to 69. Only problem was it was a ruse. It was a diversion. It wasn't legitimate, but they felt they could pull it off, and the people back then bought it pretty much. The media bought it, and eventually they just shut it all down because they felt that they had kind of gotten the high ground. They were in good shape, and they sort of did. They got the Robertson panel out of the University of Colorado, one of the most disgraceful things any university has ever done, ever. And they settled in for what they felt would be a couple of decades of calm as they continue to manage this issue to their own pleasure and keep us wandering around in the forest. And then something happened that they may or may not have known was going to happen. And that is Jesse Marcel Sr. was discovered. Not exactly hiding out, but he was hanging out in Louisiana. Not a bad place. And once he was discovered, he started being interviewed. And once he started being interviewed, the book started being written. And the story of Roswell exploded into the 20th century. And there was not a damn thing they could do about it. And it has been the benchmark for this ever since. So as we move forward, all the way back up to these last 8 years, they started creating organizations more than just a Blue Book project. A government organization, they called it UAP Task Force. Not a bad name. They put a couple of people involved. I think they put a couple of dollars in it. It was mostly a placeholder, but it was a government organization. We've never been one, really. Carter tried to get a study, got cut off. The Clinton administration took a run at things with Rockefeller money, got cut off. Nothing really formal was set up, but it created a trail of information and documents, which the activists like myself have been using for the last 30 years, right? So that helps, right? It matters. Anything that you do, whether it's public or private, as long as there's a record of it, it will be used by the activist movement. So the task force wasn't much, but it was a beginning. It had to, of course, be enhanced as the legislation moved forward. And so they came up with ARROW, all domain anomalous organization. Yeah. And it was, I'm leaving out a word there, all domain anomalous resolution office. I think it is, whatever. So that was a big deal. It got more money. It had a substantial director. It was clearly a more expansive platform, absolutely necessary. And it was created under law. So this is all appropriate. This is exactly what you would normally do given an issue of this magnitude. The thing is, it didn't start getting done until 2019, right? 2021 instead of 1961. 1952, after the flyover of Washington, D.C., which should have told everybody in the Congress and the president and everybody else that these entities were pretty serious about their engagement here and that you're going to have to deal with us. But we said, we took a different path. Okay, yeah, you flew over. Just don't keep doing that. And so ARROW is an important milestone. And then much other was happening. All right. There was discussions, there were meetings and so forth. The whole, a robust process of political engagement leading to the legislation that we must have, which is the Disclosure Act, which leads to the disclosure process culminating, finally, it's been going on for 70 years, 80 years, but it hasn't culminated. It won't culminate until everything the government of the United States has about this issue, knows about this issue, is brought forward and revealed to the world. Okay. That's the culmination of the disclosure process, and everything they learn after that, we learn about pretty quickly. We're moving in that direction. We're very close. Now, most recently, all right, there has been in the last 2 years, because we had gotten so much progress, those who are opposed to disclosure taking place decided to, I don't know, kind of a last-ditch effort to hold things off, right? One more shot, right? See if we can just prevent it, maybe until I retire. And it was vigorous. Okay, but they cut the UAP Disclosure Act in half and got that, in and got the other stuff out. They've blocked the effort to get the full act in a couple of times. All right. But then they started taking more aggressive actions. Certain individuals whose names don't need to be brought up went after key people, particularly David Grush. Okay. And they've gone after some others in the field to try to undermine them. They have put out a bogus report. I can mention that, the ARROW study, completely bogus, total lie. It's kind of like the Robertson report without all the academic credentials, but a lot more embarrassing because this is 2025, 24, not 19. 69. And so they're going to have to answer to that. And then they've been feeding blatantly false information to key papers in a way that is somewhat desperate because it's so obvious. And the paper that really took the bait was the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by an Australian, which I don't think excuses it, but it's a major paper that is very important to this country. It publishes a substantial amount of very significant articles, covers a great deal of territory, not just finance, highly respected, like the Times of London. And so somehow the Wall Street Journal, I believe they were not complicit. I actually am thinking they're not complicit. They were given an opportunity to do a story on this issue, which is obviously a pretty, well, this issue is getting covered like crazy. It's an eyeball getter, no question about it. And somehow the DOD approached them and said, look, why don't you come talk to some of the inside people, give you some good information for a nice article. So they did. They sent two reporters. I'm not going to mention their names. I've mentioned them before. I don't want to pound away here. Two not particularly senior national security reporters to go interview a whole bunch of people over a period of time. I was one of them. I helped them get in contact with one of the key people that ended up in the article, Robert Salas, Captain Robert Salas. And they wrote two articles. I think June the 6th and June the 16th, something like that. You can go find them. They're on my print media archive. Right. And they were absolutely, completely, totally disinformation from beginning to end. A bizarre last-ditch kamikaze charge into the machine guns of the social media complex to hopefully buy them a little bit of time. It was a fiasco and actually quite amusing. And it was savaged on the internet, ripped to pieces, diagnosed, autopsied, and buried, right? Haven't seen anything kind of remotely like that since, but it was an effort. So it is emblematic of the fact that there is some pushback going on now. And yet it's not enough. And the issue keeps pushing around it. All right. And so we, as part of the process that I was talking about before, in addition to legislation, in addition to creating entities, we've had 8 or 9 hearings. Prior to that, we'd had 2 half-dayers, 1966, 1968. 55 years later, we got another one. And then since then, we've had about 8 or 9 more. Now, most of them were someone coming into a hearing room, talking to a member of Congress or several members. It's sometimes not under oath, but still, we'll call that a hearing. It's been about 9 of those, but there have been 3 that were the real deal. Multiple witnesses testifying under oath, direct information about the subject. Some of them, well, most of them with security clearances. Some of them are pure witnesses. Some were actual whistleblowers. Okay. All right. They had 3, then they had 4, and then they had 5. So that's 12 witnesses. Okay. How many other witnesses are there? Hundreds. When I say how many witnesses are there, I mean, how many witnesses that have substantive information that were not locked up in a absolute underground USAP, right? They haven't even been above ground, in the last 15 years. Yeah, everything's down there. They got Subway, sandwich shops and stuff, and they got big screen and IMAX movies, whatever the hell. They got everything down there, right? Nobody have to go. You just stay there the rest of your life. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of potential witnesses. Okay. Scores have come forward. Not all of them are appropriate, but they're coming forward, or they're being approached and they're being talked to. And so there's this kind of witness pool growing and growing. Some of them face more risk than others. Some of them are more important than others. And naturally, the committees or the task force, they want the strongest witnesses they can get. And I assure you, there are plenty of people trying to do that for them, right? In various ways. And the media is helping because media, by and large, has been pretty cool with these witnesses, been pretty reasonable, not much attacking. Now on the internet, it's a little different, but the internet is that way for everything, right? I don't care who you are, what you got. Okay, the internet's going to come at you, going to, little punch here, little punch there, little ribs, some satire, And you got to factor that because that's going to happen. I don't, if Jesus Christ came back, I assure you, the internet would be split down the middle on that. He'd be getting savage, he'd be getting trolled, but then he'd getting really, really positive reviews. That is the nature of the internet because it represents the worldview or the opinions of about 5 billion people. It didn't even exist when I was born. It took me a while to adjust. Some of you are still adjusting. Do your best. My rule is this: I never debate. I never criticize. I certainly don't fight. And I'm cruising. But if you want to go there and you think you got what it takes, it's okay. But beware, because it's really brutal. So the internet is working these witnesses over, and that's happening. The other thing you need to know that's happening, which is important, is that whenever there's pushback, and it varies over the decades, there's more or less, sometimes almost none, but whenever there's pushback, it has a significant impact on the overall zeitgeist. Okay, for instance, it gives a lot of the skeptics, it encourages the skeptics, gives them some space to come out and play more than they were, and so they start turning up and doing more stuff. They got a license, they got a ticket. Hey, here's a ticket. Come out. Put out your stuff, do your thing. So that starts happening. All right. It also slows down the overall process, and I get that. But it also encourages the people in the field who are really engaged, whether it's research or politics or whatever, to fall back into a place where they really shouldn't go. And that's this. Okay, there's pushback, there's some articles, there's an arrow study. And so a lot of people dig their feet in and go, okay, I'm going to prove it all over again. Going to go back to all these cases, going to study them again, going to come up with more witness, going to prove them again. I would say don't do that. They've already been proven. They've been proven many times. Every single major case that has been significantly studied is, well, there are quite a few that are proven beyond a reasonable doubt, period. Okay. So proving them again, why? And when you're in the process of proving, then you're telling people it's not proved, not proved. So I'm gonna look at this, gonna look at that, gonna look at this case again. This, well, it's not proved if you're doing that. I don't blame people for this. What can you do? You've been waiting decades. The government has just been intransigent. You're mad, you're irritated. I get it. And so if you can't get the Congress to go further, if you can't get your local academics to do anything, so you're just going to grab a case and say, I'm going to show you. And oh, by the way, it also encourages people to do this. You're online. I've actually had this happen to me many times. Usually not in an interview like this, or I'm running a presentation like this, but a lot of situations online, kind of one-on-one or maybe a space where somebody says, give me the 5 things that proves there's an extraterrestrial presence, right? I'm listening. I don't do it. They might as well be saying, give me the 6 or 7 absolute things that proves that the earth is round. Give them to me, right? Prove it to me now, because I'm not there yet. This isn't something that just turned up a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. This is an AI Atlas situation where you got a view of it and you're thinking, well, it's, I think it's a time machine. And somebody will say to you, well, give me 2 or 3 reasons why you think that the AI Atlas is a time machine from another galaxy. It's a reasonable question given the situation and what we know about this. We're just learning, so you might give them your 3 best points of view. We're not talking about that. We're talking about an issue that has been studied for 8 decades. Thousands, tens, fives, well, I don't know, many thousands of books have been written, untold thousands, untold numbers of reports and studies, right? Documentaries. It's a massive pile of evidence that's probably 50 times bigger than it needs to be to prove the case, but it was all you could do when your government says that everything you are talking about does not even exist. Okay, so there's a lot of that going on. People are going to look at, okay, hold on, listen to me. Here's the reasons why Roswell was, and this and that, and whatever. Prove it, prove it, prove it. Then they go out into some of the weaker cases. I'm going to work on that. I get it. Here was what we really need now. If you want to maximize your time and your output to get the prize, is stop reproving and start re-engaging the politics. Start backing the disclosure movement, the New Paradigm Institute, and the Soul Foundation, and the UAP Disclosure Fund, and MUFON, which has gone very political. There's about 5 others I can't name right now, but I'll get them in that email that's going to come out. These groups that are forming. If you've got money, fund them, right? If you know somebody that has got money, got into crypto early, ask them to fund that, fund the political process. Every major progress we have made through political activism was funded by tens, if not hundreds, if not even billions of dollars. The major environmental movement in its totality, the civil rights movement that went on for 85 years, and other notable movements, the independence movements that got countries out from under colonialism. Let me tell you, the amount of money put behind those movements was staggering. The amount of money that's gone into the citizen science activist movement on this issue over the last 80 years probably would not buy a yacht bigger, slightly bigger than the most expensive yacht currently sailing the 7 seas. It's so small, it's amazing. But it is that way because the government has done everything it can to make sure you don't fund it, you don't study it, you don't talk about it, you don't put stuff in the news, you don't meet, hopefully, you don't bother the government in any way. And so I'm asking people to say, look, we're almost there. We're practically the finish line. Let's fund the people that are finishing the last couple of miles. Let's fund those organizations. Let's fund that effort. Right? We don't need to prove anything anymore. Now, a witness that comes forward to testify before Congress comes in, or they go to a skiff and they make statements. It's not inappropriate for them to have to provide as much evidence as possible. But that's a different matter altogether. That is process, legal process, with all kinds of consequences. It's public, it's out in the open. And so, yeah, but you know, if the 5 top researchers on Roswell were to sit down for a hearing, right, which could happen one day, and somebody in the panel said, "Okay, look, you got about an hour. I need you to prove Roswell happened." I would expect all of them to kind of look at each other, start laughing like hell, and go, "Are you kidding? Are you really kidding? Okay, go do your own research." All right. Okay, so this is again a sense of what's going on. We've had 8 hearings. We've had 3 major ones. The last one was very significant. I'm happy to go into those hearings if there's some questions there. When is the next hearing? Okay, now I've had the chance to help present one of the most important witnesses, Robert Salas, to Representative Nancy Meade. She was very impressed, and she was interested in having that person eventually testify. I was also able to assist in getting Robert Salas a 40-minute meeting with Congressman Burleson, who is pretty much leading the congressional side of this now. I don't know if there's, the titular leader essentially is Anna Polina Luna. She is the head of the task force, but her plate is full. She's going after a lot of stuff, to say the least. We don't need to go into it, but it's a whole bunch of files and the UAP issue, which she's never backed away from. But Congressman Burleson, wonderful guy, about as likable as any member of Congress you could want to meet, okay? Comes from a real cool part of Missouri down there where Branson is, right? Very chill. Nothing for miles in all directions. He is very much a major player now. And I think he is the one that's putting together the next hearing. I know he wants one. Are you shocked that we haven't had another one recently? No, of course you're not. When will it happen? I think they would like to have it before the end of the year. Is it possible that they can fit another UAP hearing with a whole new set of witnesses into a space between now and the end of the year? I hope so. Because it means that somewhere in the next 3 months, the eye of the storm is coming. And it is a, how would you say, a category 6 SHIT storm. Okay. That eye will pass over Washington, D.C. And during that nice little calm period, they can put a hearing in. If not, there will be one after the storm passes, early next year. The UAP Disclosure Act was finally dropped completely. Again, the fact that it was resubmitted for, I think, the 4th time is probably as important as that it be passed. Obviously, if it gets passed, that's a huge deal. But the commitment of the Senate, particularly, which is the major player there on that legislation, has been reinforced multiple times as we've gone through these various rather traumatic events and what have you, both domestically and foreign. So that bill did not get done, but they'll be resubmitted next year. But I'll be honest with you, if we get on the other side of the storm and the hearings continue, it may be, well, we may get disclosure and that together. You see, the UAP Disclosure Act doesn't have to be in the National Defense Authorization Act. One of the reasons they put it there is because it gives it more gravitas and it's more likely to get passed because it's part of this major bill with legitimate national security implications. And so if you don't want it in, you have to go specifically pull it out in reconciliation or refuse to vote it in as an amendment. And so, but it got in. We had a couple of bills, right? That's very, very important. But it doesn't have to be that way. They can pass it as a standalone anytime they want. And so it wouldn't shock me if we make some progress and the world doesn't come to an end. I've been watching a lot of apocalyptic movies lately. I'm watching this Invasion series, which is absolutely fantastic. And now I'm watching, what's it called? It's called, well, I can't remember, but a lot of apocalyptic stuff. But the Last of Us, you name it. I'm watching all of it, but I refuse to watch any more Walking Deads. Too much of that. The Walking Dead, the Later Dead, the Some Dead, the Over Dead, whatever the hell. I know more of that. There's like 600 of those. But the other quality stuff, I'm watching this stuff. If the world is not ended, we could have a situation where it comes to a head and a hearing and the bill virtually come together about the same time. Major hearing, bill follows in a couple of weeks, put forth as a standalone, and a Congress which has decided it wants to go down in history, and a president that has decided that he wants to take another incredible accolade to whatever other accolades he may have. It all happens, boom. Disclosure, the act, I mean, the act, let me get this right now. Hearing, the act, and disclosure in the spring when the weather's nice. That could happen next year. I think it's very possible. This is not one of my grotesque, optimistic projections. I don't pick dates. I don't, there's a lot of people picking dates right now. That's another interesting thing to note. If you go online and you spend a lot of time, there's a whole lot of people out there calling it. They're calling 2026, 2027, 2025. Some are getting into the month. They're calling different stuff. They're channeling it. It's coming from whatever. There's a lot of that going on. Now, am I making any specific plans around that? Not exactly. But am I noting it? Oh, yeah. Why do you think that is happening? It's happening because hundreds of millions of people around the world, possibly a couple of billion, either in the conscious or the subconscious mind or down in your gut, knows something big is going down. That's good. You know why it's good? Because this thing that's going down is a really good thing, an extraordinary thing, an unbelievably significant thing. Putting aside all the speculations about how awful it could be and this and that and everything else, that's okay. I've been in it for 30 years. I have a right to an opinion here. Of course, I've never been taken up in a ship for an examination and whatever else they might do. I've never experienced that. So I am a somewhat biased, but I respect those who have a opinion that includes that. I understand. But after 30 years, I'm saying this is unbelievably profound and will lead to, in short order, possibly in less than 2 years, us learning extraordinary information about technology that could be made available, technology that could transform our world in a time when we absolutely need technological transformation, good stuff. The stuff that will actually allow us to solve massive problems, not just iPhone 227, right? But game-changing technology, because there's 8.3 billion people on this planet, and we're not going to get things back to normal by convincing everybody to just get out of their houses and join a commune and live off the land. It's not going to happen. We need extraordinary technological advances that will allow us to feed, clothe, and house these people and provide reasonable lives so that they're a lot less likely to join a terrorist organization because they're really, really unhappy. All right? That could be available, plus other information that the government may have learned, that's available, all right? And then, of course, the possibility of open contact, which is not unrealistic in that short of time, which could lead to almost anything, right? You talk about your med beds, which, by the way, that got started because of the movie Elysium, which is a fantastic movie, right? You got to watch this movie. It's fantastic. Elysium is what started the whole med bed thing. We still don't have med beds. I think the ETs have med beds. I think the ETs would be happy to tell us how to make med beds. Beds. This is tough. And who knows? We might have med beds a couple of years. And people say, no, we're not. We're not going to get that until we figure it all out. We might have the ability to travel to the stars in a couple of years, because I believe they can travel to the stars. I know they can whiz around our skies like crazy, up, down, here, there, which is kind of a good thing if you like to get places fast, a bad thing if you're concerned about first strike nuclear weapons that could arrive in about a minute. So therefore your hair trigger is like 10 times more sensitive. They could launch a nuclear war tomorrow, right? But star travel? Yeah, I think they can do it. Now, if they can time travel, well, what the hell? I think the odds are really small. And I'm not sure we want to know how to time travel anytime soon, because I could think of all kinds of reasons. But the idea that they go from one star to another, which they told the ancients over and over again, that's what they do. And they've told contactees that's what they do. I don't know what they would lie about that. Meaning they're from the future, but we don't want you to know that. We're actually from another star. That's cool, right? From another star. We could know about that in a couple of years. So when you think about, should you support the disclosure movement? Should you fund it? Should you do what you have to do? Join up, sign up. I don't know. Think about what you could, where the world could be in just 2 years. What's on the other side of that? And think about how it's been going the previous 12,000, right? Want to pick a time in the past that you can go to, right? Not 2 years from now, go back 100, go back 1,000, pick any time you want. Go back and hang out for a couple of years. That compares to where we could be in 2 years in the future if we just do what is common sense and appropriate and long overdue. Tell the truth. So that's kind of where things are. I really enjoyed this. I need to do this more often. I'm willing to take questions if that is something that we can do today.
Yeah, we'd certainly love to take questions. Well, here's the deal. So our group loves talking. They love questions. So if you're online, what I'd like you to do is you can put a question in the chat, but I prefer you to raise your hand. So you raise your hand by clicking the react button that's at the bottom of your screen. There'll be a pop-up. There'll be several different reactions. Click the raise your hand. We'll look for that. And in the room, just put your hand up, and I've got a mobile microphone. I know Ivor's already had his hand up, so I'm gonna go over to Ivor first, and we'll let you talk, because we'll put your hand up online so we can unmute you so you can talk to Stephen directly. But I'm gonna head over to Ivor because I know he's got a question. Excuse me, can I sneak through here? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. Have you seen the Stephen Greer film, Lost Century?
I am familiar with it, seen some clips. I got a pretty much idea. I love the title. It's a fantastic title. And
Okay.
the title it known is it's valid, right? We have lost a century because of it. I can't spit out details right now, but go ahead.
Okay, so he's talking about suppressed technology relating
Right.
to 0 point energy. So in full disclosure, will we learn whether the government has been suppressing 0 point energy technology? That's the first question. Second question, after full disclosure, will we have an understanding of all the things that have been hidden, like, Die Glocke, the German bell, all those other, are we going to have full disclosure, and will we be in a situation where we will be face to face with other intelligences and be able to interact with other intelligences?
I'll answer the first one, last one first. I believe that this has all been heading for open contact with extraterrestrials. And for whatever reason, this is the way it has to happen from their point of view. And so disclosure, I believe, is essential, worldwide disclosure from all heads of state, ultimately, and a couple of years of full engagement by the entire human race on the subject, which will be a rather popular subject, to say the least, is leading to open disclosure. And now what that is, I mean, are they going to be, you know, holding concerts in some stadiums or something? They may just be interacting through media with our government in some fashion or another, and we're just informed about what's being said and what's being done or talked about. But it will be open, and it will be open to us one way or another. In terms of the first one, there is no question that they have been suppressing technology. Stuff that the ETs, they've gotten from the ETs, stuff that they come up on their own. Okay. Lots of it. Some of the stuff that they're suppressing, we don't even know exists. Back around 2000, just to give you an example, and I've told the story a few times, back around 2000, a story turned up in the Washington Post, which completely caught me off guard. Now, this is a long time ago, right? Right? Nobody knows who the hell I am, and I didn't have any. But I saw this story, and I put out an update on it or something, and brought it up in an odd interview. But this was before podcasts, right? So it's not like I was getting interviews every couple of days. But it was an article in the Washington Post that talked about the fact that the United States Air Force was doing research on antimatter. And I'm going, oh, really? Fascinating. I'm pretty sure that this article that I read in 2000 was before the movie Angels and Demons, in which antimatter played an absolutely key role in a very appropriate way. It was very realistic in a sense. If you ever get a chance to watch that movie, Angel and Demons, fantastic. And so I'm going, really? So the Air Force is doing research on antimatter, obviously as a weapon, not something that they're going to use to fly their planes. I just don't think so. And I noted that, and I commented on it. And boy, haven't had anything since. It was like it's something that popped up that wasn't supposed to, and then boom, no follow-up by the Congress, no follow-up by the media. It was like boom, bam, and gone. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, I have a degree in physics, okay? I didn't continue beyond BS because I knew I was going to be a very average physicist and probably ended up working in the accounting office or something. And so I didn't, but it gave me a little scientific perspective. I learned a few things. Most people, I don't know how many people out of 1,000 know that what antimatter is, but it's essentially the opposite, the opposite of an electron, opposite of a proton. So it's an electron with a positive charge, a proton with a negative, so forth. And every particle apparently has an anti equivalent, right? Okay, cool. Isn't that great? Except for one thing. When two antimatter particles, the opposite charge, come together, same one, electron, electron, they immediately annihilate, and all the energy is completely converted to energy. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, so what? Why should we care? I'll tell you why. The amount of energy, the amount of mass that was converted to energy in the Hiroshima bomb was far less than the weight of a dime. might have been 6% or 2% of the weight of a dime, the mass of a dime. And so if you had a bowling ball made of electrons and protons, and you had another bowling ball made up of anti-electrons and anti-protons, and you brought those two bowling balls together, you would knock down a lot of pins. You would also blow up an area probably the size of New York and maybe the entire New England. That's how much energy is in the combination of matter and antimatter. And so if any entity is studying antimatter to see how it's going to be weaponized, that's a problem. Now, fortunately for us, it is incredibly difficult to create a little bit of antimatter, but that's only because we haven't figured out how to do it easier, which is what we do. And so if you're studying weaponizing antimatter, the one thing you're studying is how can you make it easier? And if you did, and you could just make, a golf ball of antimatter and figure out how to keep it suspended in an intense field so it didn't interact with any other matter, and you made a bomb out of it, yeah, you could blow up a significant portion of a country, and probably that would not go over well. So that is what I mean. They're working on antimatter. It's not discussed. It's never brought out. It leaks out in an article in 2000. Nothing since. God knows what advancements they've made in that. And so there is that and everything else. And so, yeah. Now, one of the problems is without enough detail, you don't know exactly what they've done, what they've got out of the craft and so forth, and you have names and you have speculations about it, and the term 0 point energy is out there. Does that mean that's exactly what it is? Not necessarily, but it's the concept. It's what's important. The concept is, can you generate fundamental energy? It may be 1% of the cost of doing it now. That alone would be transformative if it could be scaled. You could literally drop the cost of existing by an enormous amount of money, creating an enormous amount of money that could go into other things. And so we want to know about the technology that they have. We want to know about it all. And we definitely want to know ultimately, and we're not going to get this until we get the ET thing out of the way. Until we get disclosure on the ET presence, which is a major hurdle 80 years on, we're not going to get to the other stuff, which is, are there USAP programs dealing in extremely advanced, dangerous biological weaponry? I'd like to know if they're doing that. And there could be, when you talk about biology, there could be hundreds of such programs because there's so much biology that could be weaponized. And lasers and antimatter or whatever the hell else. We need to know that and decide if we want that to continue. And so that might be something that comes after. And so the concept of the lost century, the concept of suppression, I think was well presented in that movie. I need to watch it again. Now, finally, disclosure, full disclosure, are we going to get it all? This is my fault. I take full responsibility for this. I have definitely put a lot of time and effort in getting the word disclosure out there. But I'm not the first one to put it out there. The one that put this out there initially, as far as I'm concerned, there may have been some minor blip in the past, was Stephen Greer. Dr. Greer made disclosure, put it up on the stage with the Disclosure Project. And of course, he was using it in that material, and that got it going. And that's really good, okay? And we have been in a disclosure process since 1947. The press release that went out from the Roswell Army Air Base was disclosure. They disclosed they had a saucer, a disc, okay? And there's been nothing but small d disclosure ever since, and it will continue for the rest of our lives and forever. Small d disclosure, getting information out, revealing it from whatever way, from whatever source. Small d disclosure. But that term, even small d disclosure, got very attached to this issue, starting with Greer, and I joined up and others joined up, and we made it a thing. Disclosure, revealing, get it out. So when people would hear disclosure, they're not thinking of the movie with Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, they're thinking about, yeah, ET stuff. Okay. But then I complicated it by bringing up another word. Okay. Capital D disclosure, a proper noun. Okay. And it's like this. If you grab a bunch of dirt and hold it up and you could say, this is Earth, people go, yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's Earth. But if you make it a capital E, you better be holding the planet in your hand, because the capital E means a planet, Earth. Capital D disclosure is a proper noun that I have gone to great lengths for nearly 25 years to make a thing. Now, I don't write books. I haven't written a book. If I had, I think it would have been easier and more appropriate. It's all on me. Very, very, very skittish, ADDH, all kinds of issues. I can't sit still. In any event, capital D disclosure is the formal confirmation by heads of state. It's an event. It takes 5 minutes. It could take a minute. A head of state confirms we're not alone. There's not human tech here, non-human bodies here. That's the capital D disclosure. The other heads of state come in. It's done. After that, the disclosure process continues, but obviously at a much more intense level, aided by the UAP Disclosure Act. It'll be happening in multiple countries. And of course, there is a vast amount of stuff that's pretty high level that's going to come out, right? And so that's post capital D disclosure, more disclosure. Now, the answer, what is ultimate disclosure? There is no ultimate disclosure. What is catastrophic disclosure? I'm not thrilled with that term because it has too many meanings. Ultimate disclosure now. But what is enough disclosure? All right. Our society will decide about that. The people will decide, the Congress will decide. But ultimately, after capital D disclosure, stuff is going to start coming out. It's going to be coming out pretty immediately. It will have fits and starts, but it will be continuous. You will have more information coming out until we empty virtually everything that the government knows and has. It might take no more than 6 years, right? And a good deal of what other countries know. Will we get every last drop? No. Will we get 95, 8, 9%? Yeah. And we will be in another place. And we will be in good shape. And hopefully we'll be getting open contact. But in order to get to that 90+%, we have to get the Disclosure Act passed. We have to get confirmation by the head of state. So ultimate capital D disclosure, I defined it. So I'm always right about that. It's confirmation of an extraterrestrial non-human tech presence by the head of state of a country. Hopefully the United States first. That's capital D disclosure. And full disclosure would be ultimately everything that is known about ETs, everything we have about ETs in every government is brought forward and known to the world. We don't need that. We may get there someday, but 6 years of robust disclosure, I assure you, we will be in another place that you can't even fully imagine right now. The next answer could be shorter than this. Let's try it.
Okay. Well, what I had to ask is, I think the aliens tried to do disclosure back in the early 50s. You may have heard of Valiant Thor and Strangers at the Pentagon. I think that was their attempt to get us onto a different track. Do you remember any of that? Or
Of course. Also the flyover of DC. All of these things, right, which some may be actually correct, some may not be, come under small d disclosure. All right. Because the head of state did not come forward and confirm the extraterrestrial presence, and the issue just moves on, right? And so they flew over Washington, D.C. for 10 days. They were seen on radar. They sent up planes. There's nothing they could do about it. And they had to come up with some fast answers pretty quickly. They managed to dodge that bullet, but just barely. And that's what launched the Robertson report. But that was still not capital D disclosure. That was small d disclosure. Everything that has come out with respect to ETs, right, and that phenomenon, UFOs, whatever, from 1947 on, which is kind of the formal beginning in a way, the initial beginning, whether it's true or not true, or partially true, everything that's come out that's related to this issue is part of small d disclosure. Because even something that's not true, but has got some gazing to it, right? That gets people's attention, actually helps them advance the issue. One of the reasons we're here today is because of 600 movies that hit the big screens, generating a couple of $100 billion in total revenues about fictional ETs. They weren't real, but they have helped educate or make aware to the entire population of this planet, with only a few exceptions, that this idea of extraterrestrials is, yeah, sure, we can think about that. That's something. And so, again, my response to your question is, was it capital D? No. Was it possibly part of the small d disclosure? Yes.
Cool. Is there anyone online? I'm not seeing anyone online yet. Anyone online? Okay. So yeah, I've got a question. So it's kind of a two-pronged question too. So you talked about Congress and the rock stars in Congress and whatnot. So one of the people that I've been aware of in Congress, because it seems like some of them kind of like jump on board because it's a trendy kind of wave thing to do. One of the people that I've seen from Congress is Tim Burchett. He doesn't seem like he's just because it's on the trendy thing. He seems like he's really involved and really digging into that. So I'm curious, do you know Tim Burchett? What do you think of him? And then the B part is, who do you think is also really looking for the truth and that we should really watch as movers and shakers in this area?
Sure. I'm not aware of anybody in Congress that has jumped on the issue because they wanted to get some press. Wanted to be, involved in something cool. No. This is not an issue that you do that with. They do that, I assure you. But no, this is the most important issue in the world today. The results of disclosure will be beyond a paradigm shift, beyond anything the human race has ever experienced. So no, you just don't jump in. So here are the people that are leading this issue. In the House, it has been members of the Oversight Committee, some of which have crossed over to the Oversight Committee Task Force on Declassifying Federal Secrets, which includes the UAP, as its crown jewel as far as I'm concerned. Tim Burchett was out early and emphatically. For whatever reason, he bit down on this issue. I'm sure he's had X number of interviews. I know he's given a number of interviews to Ron James. There's a lot of film of him out there. He's been open. He's one of these kind of members of Congress. He's going to say what he wants to say. If you don't like it, tough. And he's been adamant about it. He has gone on the record on television saying there's ETs here a number of times in a couple of ways. Can't ask for better than that. Okay, right? Is that any different than Edgar Mitchell saying that we had extraterrestrial presence back in 2009? It is different. Even though Edgar Mitchell walked on the moon, had a PhD in astrophysics, that's not the same thing as an elected politician going on television in front of millions of people and saying, there's ETs here, and not doing it once, but a number of times. And so he is in it. He is not going to leave it. And I assure you, he has gotten a great deal of positive press because of it. I have yet to read a negative press on him. Now, on the internet, anything's possible. Some people are going to say whatever they're going to say. If they don't like it, they don't like it. But I'm talking about the press. No, nothing. So he was kind of early. All right, now, in that sense, okay. But remember, as we go back to the beginning of what I call the formal political engagement, Marco Rubio is out there in 2020 because he is the one that introduced that piece of legislation into the COVID bill, which was, the omnibus bill, which included the NDAA. And so he was early, okay, did his thing, kind of moved on. And Gillibrand followed with a very brief hearing, not a brief hearing, but a small hearing regarding the task force. And then we learned that Warner sponsored some of the legislation for the next bill. All right. And so they were early on. And then, of course, Schumer stepped in a huge way in July after the Grush testimony, when he announced shortly thereafter that, yeah, we're going to put the UAP disclosure bill into the NDAA. all right? He and Mike Rounds. But as you may have noticed, the Senate people, and these are the key members of the Senate that have engaged this, they have done something meaningful, but they're not just spitballing. They're not just turning up and saying something. They're pretty much, they've done that and then they step back. And there's a reason for that. If you want to get bits and pieces about the senators, you got to go to www.askapol, ASKAPOL.com, askapol.com. Matt Laszlo. He is a freelance journalist that just cruises the hill and buttonholes people and gets comments about what's going on. It's fantastic. I repost a lot of his stuff. I would go subscribe to askapol.com because he's really doing something nobody else is doing. And he has buttonholed these senators and they'll say something. And so that's on the Senate side. On the House side, it's different, right? They've jumped in and they are constantly getting something out, being interviewed, giving an interview. And so who are these people? Well, you've got Burchett, of course. And then you've got, well, essentially Nancy Mace steps in big time after that. Burleson follows after that. I think I'm leaving somebody out. I'm sure it'll come to me. Several of the Democrats have said some things. Moskowitz, Garcia, but they have not engaged it in the intensity of Luna, Mace, and Burchett. All right. At the very first hearing, the key hearing, that was Grush, Fravor, and Graves, but Grush, which is the launch pad of a major amount that's going on. That was like a first stage rocket took off, right? A rocket took off. That was the first stage of a big rocket. Two of the most liberal, progressive Democrats were there. They weren't part of the committee, I'm pretty sure, but they did show up. Jamie Raskin and AOC. They sat off to the far left. They did ask some intelligent questions, and then they, went about their business. No follow-up. They didn't get engaged after that. They had nothing to say. But they were there. Okay, fine. Now, you may ask, how is it that the ET issue is being driven forward in the House by 90% conservative Republicans, but is, well, pretty much more balanced in the Senate? The answer is this. The Senate and the House are very different. The Senate is the higher body, and they have certain responsibilities, certain key nominations that have to go through them, and a lot of other heavy-duty stuff. And so they're less likely to go up on the high dive, jump off, and do a couple of backflips. I mean, they kind of keep it chill. The House is not that way. There's 435 people there. It's wild and crazy, and anybody can jump in at any time about something. So it's a very different place, and so they have been much more aggressive about this. And Republican. Why Republican? Why have they dominated? The best answer I can give is this, and it's a nonpartisan statement, but one might think otherwise. But the Republicans are much more transactional. What's the other word I'm looking for? They're very transactional, intense. They're also kind of having their time. I mean, they really have been a major factor in government for some time. On the other hand, the Democrats are much more issue-oriented, particularly causes. In other words, there's issues and there's causes. I don't really I don't see the word being used with Republicans like cause much, but often with the Democrats. And then they have environmental causes. They have other causes, rights and justice and this and that and everything else. So it's fine. Okay, whatever. It's fine. They take them very seriously. And one of the reasons the Democrats have not engaged this issue. I mean, remember, it wasn't really engaged politically at all for most of the time. But as we move to the forefront, not quite as much there, is because this issue has been maintained, the lie has been maintained through an enormous effort to stigmatize it, to demean it, to undermine it, to make people believe you're crazy if you talk about it, to look funny, and all the green alien stuff, all of that stuff, which created what I call an intellectual ghetto. I think the Democrats are more sensitive to engaging it because they do not want any stigma from that issue to then slide over and affect their other causes, which they hold very dear. This is the best explanation that I have. And I'm, somebody is going, wait a minute, Steve, there's a huge hole in that. So it's not a partisan statement. It's just they're coming from different places, have somewhat different worldviews, different things they care about. And also the Republicans generally are more national security oriented, and this issue always has and always will have a significant national security component.
Cool. We've got 2 questions online, so I'm going to go to 3 questions online. I'm going to go to Mill G first. Mill, you're going to see a little pop-up asking you to unmute. So why don't you unmute and I'll let you talk to Stephen directly. So you should see a pop-up right now saying unmute.
I'm already unmuted.
Gotcha. Okay, go for it.
Hello.
Okay, hi, thank you for your meeting.
Sure.
I've heard Donald Trump say many times that it's really like a warning to other countries. If they mess with us, he, in no uncertain terms, say that he will annihilate them. What do you think he's hidden behind that statement?
All right, you brought up a subject that I intend to get into. I was going to get into it. I knew I'd do it in the questions. I'm pretty sure when President Trump makes statements along those lines, he is referring to, and only referring to, human enemies of the United States, whether individually or in groups, organizations, or anything else. He is not referring to extraterrestrials.
Right.
So that's an easy answer. Now, let me go further. I am aware I have a significantly good reason to say that the issue of the President of the United States ending the truth embargo is in play in the White House. All right, it's under consideration. And I can go into detail if you want for why I think that way. But let me just say, at minimum, it is in play. And there is a pretty good case to be made that the president at this point could do it at any time. In other words, there's no real barrier, and the amount of preparation and the amount of infrastructure that needs to be created and everything else is pretty much there. I'd like to see more, certainly the UAP Disclosure Act, but certainly over the next couple of months, there is no significant barrier to the president coming forward, and some very significant, how would you say, incentives for the president at this particular time to do this. Whereas as you go back in the past, those incentives just fall away and fall away and fall away. They're not there. And then eventually, of course, they're overcome by the national security strictures of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it just wasn't going to happen. But as we kind of moved to where it could happen, there was still not much incentives. That has changed. And so I will not be shocked if disclosure comes from the President of the United States anytime in the next 3 months. I will not be shocked at all. And that is disclosure, period. And we are in the post-disclosure world. And I can assure you that other heads of state will confirm it as well within a week of any announcement from our president. So that's my status report on that.
Well, thank you. Did you have more, Mildred? Because I was going to move on to somebody else unless you have something else.
Yeah, I don't know what the truth embargo is. Could you explain that?
The truth embargo is the term that I came up with in around 2000. And I'll try to be short on this. Again, I'm a political activist. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a journalist. I'm an activist. And so the goal of the activist is to get something done, right? There's something needs to be done, and it all involves the government somehow. Government's got to do something because things are wrong. And so you have various things that you can do. You can march, you can blog, you can do all kinds of things. You can lobby, okay? But one of the things that's important in activism, if you are an activist, particularly if you're early, right, is language. An activist movement has to have the right language, or it really makes it much harder to succeed. Okay, and there are many examples of that. I can assure you, some really awful, some not so awful. But as I entered the activism on this issue in 1996, I began to sense and understand that there were serious language problems. UFO was a problem. UFO had been stigmatized to death, right? Just, bring up UFO at a board meeting, watch how fast all of a sudden you lose your stock options, right? Or if you're a physicist at some school or university, UFO is a problem. Not because it's something intrinsically bad about it, but because it had been deliberately demeaned and stigmatized by the government. They poisoned it, right? They pumped poison in it with a syringe. So we needed a better term, UAP.
Right.
Unidentified aerial phenomenon means exactly the same thing. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I pushed that term really hard. Eventually it became, or it has a second version, which is unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is actually even better, but whatever, UAP, not UFO. And then there was a matter of the UFO cover-up. That was really a problem because one, it's got UFO in it, and it's got cover-up. And so everybody's talking as I come into the field in 96 about the UFO cover-up, and Art Bell and everywhere else. I'm going, this is not good. UFO is a stigmatized term. And cover-up means that the policy of the United States government on this issue is a crime. You don't cover up legal things. You cover up crimes. Okay, that's self-evident. And so every time you say UFO cover-up, you're saying the government is committing crimes in order to not tell us the truth about the UFO issue. But it's not. From the beginning, it has been a legal national security policy of the United States. You could not possibly put anybody in jail because they have been keeping the truth from this subject in a basic way. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't break a law doing it, but when it comes to national security, it's amazing how far you can go before you're going to go to jail. And so it was a legal policy. And when you call it a cover-up, you're making it illegal. You're saying everybody involved, everybody working on the tech, and everybody that's running programs or whatever involved in this issue, which they consider a very important national security matter, are criminals. And so if you criminalize the people on the inside, do not expect them to be very cooperative or like you. And so I'm saying we got to call it something else. It's an embargo is what it is. It's a truth embargo, right? And so you have a Cuba embargo right now. Is it illegal? No. Are the people that are managing the Cuba embargo, it's not quite like it used to be, but it's still there. No, they're not. And we understand that. We don't get all riled about it. Should we end that embargo? Well, it depends on your politics. And so this is like the Cuba embargo, an embargo on the ET issue. The only difference is in the case of Cuba, the government is more than happy to confirm there is a Cuba. But in the case of the truth embargo, they don't even acknowledge that there's even in truth there to embargo. But what can I say? So that's a matter of language. And that's what the truth embargo is. It's a term that I came up with to replace UFO cover-up. I take full responsibility for it.
Did you come up with the term UAP also?
No, but I helped push that term. That and bouncing around. But since I do lots of media, I kept bringing it up and talking about the advantage of replacing it as opposed to just using it. But others were doing the same. It was a collective effort, and we succeeded. However, and this is pretty cool, about 4 years into the modern closing era, the late 17 to the end of 21, because I'm following the media. Remember, I got those 8,000 articles on my website under projects, paradigmresearchgroup.org. I suddenly realized UFO was back. It was being used. It was being used by media, it was being used by politicians, and there was no problem. In other words, we had made so much progress that UFO got destigmatized and was back in play. It still is. So you can use either one now. That's a sign of progress.
Well, we've got
Okay,
two
so
more.
wait, getting back to the original question, what do you think Trump is hiding behind that statement?
Oh, I know, I told you. Well, hiding, no, he was making a statement that's pretty straightforward. If you are an enemy of the United States, if you mean to do it harm, however he defines an enemy of the United States, they're going to get annihilated because it's not a fair fight. So that's pretty much it. To know the specifics, you would have to ask the president.
Cool. So we've got two more I really want to get in before we cut off. So we got Patty shooting next. So Patty, it looks like I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then we want to get Bill McNuff in too. So Bill, hopefully we'll get to you too. But Patty is, nope, oh, hang on, where did Patty go? She was right there. And then I see if I can ask Patty to unmute. Where'd she go? Did she leave? Oh, there she is. Okay, oh, it looks like she's unmuted. Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah.
Patty, can you hear us? Patty, we can't hear you. Looks like Bill McNuff is unmuted too. Bill, do you have a question?
I'm having trouble finding a question that Steve hasn't answered already.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I'll pass.
Keep thinking. You'll come up with something. It's a big issue.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess someone next to me is asking if you know anything about Space Force and what's going on with that.
Space Force was inevitable. They were going to have one. And it generated all kinds of speculations, obviously. I get it. The ET issue is massive and huge, so why not? Exactly what, well, we don't know what role the Space Force might be playing with respect to the non-human technological presence, because as we know, there is no non-human technological presence, and so it's a moot point. But let's just put it this way. I hope the Space Force does become a significant player in this, because if you want to play Space Force games, or you want to play war games with the ETs, you can't win, and that would be very bad. But let's be clear. War in space could easily develop. It's already being planned out by a number of countries, including us. It's the dumbest thing I can imagine doing, but what the hell? I mean, doing dumb things is practically an innate fundamental trait of human beings. And we're never more dumb than when we blow things up, particularly lots of things. And so satellite wars, use of satellites as possible sudden first strike weapons, meaning you thought it was a satellite. No, it's an EMP bomb and it suddenly just dropped down, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you kind of need a Space Force because, barring some significant changes down below, we're going to have a war in space too. And one of the great sci-fi series of all time, which starred a good friend of mine, Thomas Jane, love this guy. Expanse is all about how we just took the whole war into the solar system, right? And we had a solar system instead of just an Earth, and we continued to have wars. It was great, and I'm sure we would take it to the galaxy if we could, but we won't. We're not even going to be able to take it to the solar system, frankly, because the ETs have pretty much, I think, had enough of this particular behavior, and they seem to be determined to move along from that. I hope that's the case, at least. Yes. Next question.
I think that's it, and that's about all we've got for time. So I want to thank. Oh, was that a question, Ellen? What's the question?
I'll go on. I'll go on as long as you
Well,
want.
since my microphone isn't working, can somebody ask my question for me? Okay, yeah, Patty, put your question in the chat. We'll ask your question for you. Is your question in the chat, Patty? I'm hoping you're typing right now.
Let me check the chat. Patty says in chat, is this disclosure in the next 2 months directly related to Atlas 3I? If you're going to put money down on that and FanDuel, put your money on, this is a very interesting extrasolar transient object that may have been flying through space for a couple of billion years, that may have some different makeup, shockingly, that's going to pass right on through and go right on beyond and head out for another couple of billion years. We're going to learn some things from it. And that's it. However, am I thrilled to see everybody in the internet trying to find the ET connection to Three Eye Atlas? By the way, it's Three Eye Atlas and one of the great names for anything. It's fantastic. Third interstellar object to pass through as a transient, and it was first discovered by a telescope array that has the acronym is ATLAS. This is fantastic. But the level of interest and awareness of the ET presence now is worldwide. There's billions of people that are thinking about this from time to time, and so they're trying to find an ET connection to it. I love it.
Well, yeah, my problem with Atlas, though, is if you look at what Atlas stands for, it stands for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. Like, this is the last alert we're getting. We can't get a first alert, an early alert.
No,
I
you
saw it as
be thankful we have a last alert system. Okay, don't worry. This one is not one to worry, but because we have it and we're looking is how we picked it up, right? But yeah, so it's not. Look, a lot of people are dining out on this, Avi Loeb, of course, and that's fine. It's not something, it's not my thing. So have fun, enjoy it. But I'll tell you this. I don't care when it happens, in the middle of the night. Could be 3 a.m. If that puppy changes course in any way that can't be explained gravitationally, for God's sakes, call me. Wake me up.
Very cool, very cool. Well, Minnesota MUFON, let's give Stephen Bassett a big round of applause. Give him a hand.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us. And of course, next month we're going to have someone else from the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance with us, Dan Harari. So we're going to get a lot of Hollywood Disclosure Alliance coming up. So looking forward to Dan. We'll be back here on the second Saturday of next month. Did you want to say anything about Dan and your connection with Dan before?
Well, sure. Hollywood Disclosure Alliance was not easy to do. It was scary, but without almost any money, we got it going to create a free networking organization that simply helped people get together, network to create content. Not so much to do more research proving the ET presence, but to create content, movies, documentaries, whatever, books, don't care. But content between people that have content skills, even up to the level of Steven Spielberg, we don't care. And people that have done the work, the citizen researchers and activists who have been doing this for 20 years. And they're not consulted on a lot of these. They don't call up these people if they do these movies. They just throw something together. They talk to their kids, and they get it wrong. And so by the way, the people that have carried the water for these decades would be nice if they could participate in some very lucrative projects and make a little bit of money, so they can have a retirement fund, which I don't have right now. I assure you, nothing. But who knows? I may get involved in a project. You never know. But it's really cool. We got 230 members. So if you have, a lot of, if you've put a lot of time into this issue and you know a lot, and you feel you could be helpful to a media project, you can become a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. If you are in the film industry, content industry, to a degree that you would prefer to be on the Hollywood side, which means entertainment industry, you can become a member. And so that is, and it's growing, and I think it's going to be helpful. And I'm very proud of it. Dan Harari, of course, brought up the idea. I immediately said, "Oh yes," and changed the name from association to alliance. And so that's the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Okay, done that. Paradigm Research Group, by the way, is a nonprofit now, has been for about a year, and it is raising money through donations, tax-deductible donations. And so on my website, there is a donation platform there. Anything helps right now. And again, anything that comes into me goes towards ending the truth embargo, period. And I'm helping other organizations like the New Paradigm Institute and so forth. And so they all need funding as well. So think about that. And let's all move ahead, get disclosure, and then we'll just party for the rest of this decade.
That sounds like a fantastic plan. One more round of applause for Steve.